This is going to be water pump and timing belt replacement part 2. We have the water pump out now. Everything from this point forward is going to be reinstallation of the water pump and timing belt. So the next step is to clean up the mating surface of the water pump. This gasket has to come off so that I can get a clean mating surface. Oh, no, it's going to come off in one piece. How about that? And that's a metal OEM gasket. Looks like it's in great shape. Nothing wrong with that gasket that I can see. The whole problem with this water pump was it was leaking out of my weep hole. The pump and everything looks good. I don't understand why it would come out of the weep hole if everything on the actual pump looks good. That's the weep hole right there. As the car was running, it was just dripping. That's actually one sign of my oil leaks. The oil would mix with the coolant as it was coming down and it would just coat everything. The slot right here was really clean compared to everything else in the area. Actually, it looks like this pump has 2 weep holes. This is how the pump would be orientated on the car if you're looking straight up at it. You have your weep hole on the bottom here, but then there is another one up here. Now, I didn't see anything coming out of that one, but there was definitely something coming out of this one. It was a nice drip. It seems like oil might have actually been my issue here. That leaks down from the valve cover gasket was coating this seal. Oil on a rubber seal will deteriorate it. I might actually have a good water pump. The seal was just bad because of all the oil getting on it. So I have to fix the oil leak. I'm going to do during the reverse installation process of this video. But you have to get rid of that oil leak first. Otherwise, this is just going to happen again. So you got to start off with a good mating surface. I'm not a mechanic. That's what I'm going to do in my case. And if I ever have to go back at this because I did it wrong, hey, that's on me. And I'll keep you updated to see how this goes in the future and see how long my repair lasts. The edges of this are so sharp that it chews right through the Scotch-Brite like a razor blade. What I did instead was use some 1200 grit. Just come down here, sand the surface. Yeah, this is going to take a while. I would take a towel that I sprayed with degreaser, clean it up, and just keep coming in here and sanding it down little by little, little by little. You'll get it until it's a nice shiny surface. Here's our new water pump. Got this one from Rock Auto, and it just seems to be a generic water pump. Manufactured for Canada in the USA, but made in China. Chinese are starting to get slick. USA, Canada, yay. Oh wait, no, made in China. Look how awesome that gasket is when it arrived to me. It's just a fiber. I could cut one out and make one myself. The original OEM is metal. Says to use sealant, coat both sides of this gasket, but I mean, look at this. It almost looks like it doesn't want to line up quite right. See this little space here? That's not right. I'm almost tempted to use the old one. Let the coating begin. Coat both sides. You don't have to be clean about it. Just got to get it on there. Wow, perfect fit. That was a joke, of course, because this gasket is so... And this sucker is not going to stay down there. You know, I should have just ordered a new gasket from Mazda, because that, with it pulling away and it not being a flat gasket, they just threw the water pump right in there with the gasket laid on top. Look at all this during shipping. It's just sitting in there loose. I'm surprised that gasket wasn't even broken. Well, that's completely worthless. My water pump's going to be sitting outside of my car for about a week until that part gets here. And I was hoping it was going to stick down. If your gasket is not flat, don't even bother. I'm going to send Rock Auto this video so they can look at what their distributors are doing packaging this crap. Just throwing a gasket in a box, not cool. Now I have to clean this entire surface of the Permatex and throw this crap away. Okay, Rock Auto, that is going in the trash. It's not that big of a deal because it didn't get all over the place. I can clean that fairly easily with a razor blade once it dries. Just a minor setback. If you've ever been watching my videos, minor setbacks are what I'm all about. That's par for the course. Alright, I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know how many times I have to say that. No, these are not turbos, these are water pumps. Alright, I went up to the dealership. I got a new gasket. This is the new gasket. I also got a little O-ring for the oil dipstick. Alright, that gasket is nice and flat, and this gasket is just a metal gasket. The dealership will only install this. It is very, very thin. This gasket was on the block, and then what someone did was they used this fiber gasket. Fiber gasket came with this water pump, and they just put this fiber gasket right on top and then put RTV all around that and slapped it together. Honestly, I would not have expected that to work, but that worked fairly well for a very long time. I think that's a viable option because it did work in my case. If I had to guess, I would say 60 or 70,000 miles. Worked no problem. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this metal gasket, and it has like black coating, and I'm guessing that's an adhesive spray that they coat the gasket with and then dry it and then package it. I'm just going to put that right on. I'm not going to use any type of silicone. No RTV, no nothing. I'm just going to smack that on there and install it. And I know that might be a heresy to some people. Eric the Car Guy, in his video where he redid a water pump on a Cavalier, I did my research, he just put a couple little dabs on there. This isn't going to slide around. And basically, you don't even need that. If you don't think that's going to work, please feel free, let me know. I'm just going to do like Eric the Car Guy does, and I'm just going to put a little dab here. Okay, nothing major. And the only reason that you do that is just to hold it in place. And yes, you must hold it in place like this. I already just tried to go and install it in the car. Without that, not going to happen. You have to have something to at least hold this in place, at least temporarily. That's tight. Alright, now I'm not going to tighten that down too much. Now I got to go under the car and get the other two bolts. I got the bolts on the bottom tight. I'll raise the engine back up. Alright, and then just do another round of tightening. Next, we're going to go ahead and install our idler pulley. The idler pulley is the one that does not have this tensioner spring bracket, and it just spins. That's all it does. It spins, spins, sugar. There is no washer involved with this one. This one just slides right in there, and that's a long one, so I'm going to be here for a while. That one's going to be a 14. The next step is to install your rubber seals. Alright, I did actually get it in there. I just set it right here, and then I started working that top edge in with a screwdriver, and slowly but surely it made its way in there. So that this section right here is also watertight. I don't know why it's like that. I am sure that it does come from the factory that way with these kind of gaskets. And the same goes for the bottom, which is supposed to go right there. Now that second one, more of a pain in the ass to deal with, but it is possible to get it wedged in there and seated correctly. I'm not using RTV, I'm just stuffing them in there after the fact. You know, I'm just trying to get this done in the best way that I know how. I don't know any better. If anyone out there knows better, please let me know. I don't like doing things wrong or making mistakes, but no one's perfect, and I don't know everything. Hell, I barely know anything. Let me know what you would do if you were confronted with this situation. Now we're going to install our idler pulley. Screw that in by hand for quite a while. Just get that hand tight. Now we'll go find our torque specs. We got your torque wrench. I'm not going to be able to fit my torque wrench on here because I have a 1/2 inch, but I don't have a 1/2 inch socket set. So I need the adapter, and I can't fit it in here. Okay, here's all the torque specs. I have this little inch-pounds torque wrench. There is a difference between inch-pounds and foot-pounds, about 840 inch-pounds. So I have to do a conversion on the idler pulley is going to be 28 to 38 foot-pounds. I'm going to shoot for about 30 pounds, 360 inch-pounds. And the reason I chose 360 is because it actually says 360 on here. I can notch it right on 360 and still be within spec, so that's what I'm going to do. I should be able to fit that right in there, no problem. There we go, torque to spec, cool beans. The water pump bolt specs are 14 to 18 foot-pounds. I'm pretty sure I tightened them a hell of a lot tighter than that. 14 to 18, no, it's gonna leak. I'm not doing that. Okay, next up we need to go ahead and put our power steering pump back on. Brackets lined up. Kind of hard to do. Alright, there's one. That was a pain in the ass, and they're not even in there tight. Then just run those down. That is 14 to 18 foot-pounds, which is 160 to 214 inch-pounds. That's not much, is it? Good. This one is 28 to 38 foot-pounds, and since it's way up here and easy to access, I can actually use my foot-pounds torque wrench. There we go. Every time after you're done using your torque wrench, unlock it and then spin it down, because there's spring pressure in here, so you want to unwind that spring until there's free play. No pressure on that spring. You do not want to store your spring when it's compressed. Alright, it'll break. Pick this up from my local auto parts store. This is about the cheapest torque wrench you can get. Alright, we got the idler installed, and you want your spring situated over on the left side. It just says left. I have no idea how far off it's supposed to be exactly. There's no measurements, there's no angles, there's no degrees. It just shows it being installed off to the left, so I guess that back pulley where the spring connects rotates independently of the bearing. I think the next thing is probably going to be the timing belt. Time to put the timing belt on, guys. This is a moment of truth. Just like I did in the first video that I did for the head disassembly, it's pretty much just as hard. You got to use all the strength in your fingers, every fiber of your being, to get that belt up and over. That belt is brand new. It's going to be very tight. It's not going to be like taking off the loose belt. Taking it off is the easy part. Putting it on, that's a hard part. So let's get to the hard part. We have the timing belt down around the lower timing belt gear on the inside of the idler pulley and on the inside of the tensioner pulley. Remember, any slack has to be on the left side. You cannot have slack on the right side. Man, that's tight. Why is that so damn tight? Jesus, man. I probably need about 2 more millimeters of free play on that belt. That's about as close as I can get it. On the right cam, the belt is barely on the edge of there. So that is as close as I can get it there. And in the Real Fixes Real Fast video, he kind of folds it over a little bit to try and give himself some extra room to walk it on there. That guy is freaking strong, I'll tell you that. Super tight doesn't even begin to explain how tight this damn thing is. There's no give. If I pull up on this side of the belt here, it's going to rock that crankshaft and throw off your timing mark for top dead center. Oh, what a pain in the ass. The keyway on there is now off center. It's not on time anymore down there. So pulling on these belts in one direction or another can move that. I said screw it. I'm going to put the belt on the left and try and bring it up one tooth at a time. And you have to press that tooth up and then into the track, and then work your way up to the next one, all while making sure that those teeth stay in the track. And by the time you get to just about there, that's when life starts getting to be hell. From here to here, all right there, is going to be the toughest test. And you're going to need lots of finger strength. Now I use my right finger to press and keep the belt on with my left hand, and I'll try and swivel the teeth on like that. Alright, here we go. And yes, I am fully slacked on that tensioner, but I'm sweating all over the place. This belt is grinding into my hand. Oh, it's turning my hand raw, and it's hurting. If you're wondering why I'm sweating so bad, it's because it's almost 100% humidity. That'd be a guess. It feels like 100%, and I'm under a heat lamp. I feel like a baby chicken about to hatch. It's hot under here. I think that's almost it. In an effort to be perfectly fair, I left the belt a little bit off the bottom of here so that it would give me just a little bit extra slack up top. Now I have to come down here and push this one of the gears on the bottom. Easier said than done. Actually, this is going on quite easy. Probably because of all the oil that got down here. Okay. Oh, Lord baby Jesus. Oh, Lord baby Jesus. And that's as fast as I could do it. It took me about 15 minutes. And it is only because I have done it before. I have no idea if the way that I'm doing it is the way that everybody else does it. That's the way I've done it twice now, and it works. It's a pain in the ass. As I've said, that tensioner is rolled all the way to the left as far as I could get it. So that is giving me as much slack as I can possibly get. Now I need to go in and make sure that my belts are situated on my pulleys correctly, which they're not. They're off a little bit. The only thing the belt tensioner does is it adds extra tension as the belt ages and stretches. Because that belt ain't stretching, ain't going anywhere. Just taking some white paint, making a mark from my keyway straight up, because that's where your pulley is going to be aligned. When you have to shift around that pulley, it's nice to have an easy way to see where top dead center is. You can't see behind the pulley, so you're not going to be able to see that little notch there. So if you put it on the outside, you can see it. If you notice, there's actually two marks. This is top dead center, and this is 10 degrees before top dead center. How do I know it's 10 degrees before top dead center? Because that's where the actual timing mark is. There's a tiny, tiny little notch there. It is a physical notch in the pulley. It's like a little indentation, and you're supposed to fill that so that when you put a timing light on it, it will actually blink. And you want that to be as small as possible. You can more accurately gauge where your timing mark is, or where that notch is. Without paint on there, it is very hard, if not impossible, to see that timing notch. So you will commonly see that these are painted, and they are painted from the factory. They have actually yellow marks from the factory, and you can paint it any color that you want. You want to use a light color, so either white or light yellow, light pink, or light blue, or something like that, because you want it to show up in the timing light. You don't want to use a dark color. So this is the only real mark that's needed, and again, make it small as possible. If you make this a really large mark, you're not going to get very accurate readings, so you want to make that a small mark. Okay, so when you look at the crank pulley, this is what you're going to see. You can't see the notch, so there's no way for you to know where that keyway is behind here, because it's behind the head of this big ass bolt. Okay, now that we got the belt on, we can go ahead and take our wrenches off. And next we need to temporarily install our crank bolt back in there and spin it back over. Watch those cams, and those marks should line back up. The crank should be pointing straight back up top dead center on that notch. That was one full rotation. We got to go around 2 rotations. The notch on the crankshaft pointing directly up. It's perfect on the bottom. They're pretty damn close. Now, if I was to go up a tooth on either side, try and make up for that slack, I'd be something like that. I'd be way off. I am about as close as I can get it within reason without being up one tooth, which will put it way too far off. I think I'm okay. What do you think? Next thing we have to do is rotate the tensioner pulley. I gotta reach way around you so that you can see. Alright, I got my key in. Now we're supposed to rotate it up. That's as far as it's going. Can't see what I'm doing because of this stupid cap on here. Alright, I finally did it, but as you can see, I had to tie off that hex key, obviously, and I used some wire to do it. Almost the same principle as keeping the cams open. You have to keep that tensioner in the tensioned position far enough so that the eyelet for the tensioner spring comes up. As you pull that hex key up, that eyelet for the tensioner spring also comes up. You got to pull it for everything you're worth because it is tight. I mean, that belt is super tight already. You can imagine just how tight that wire is. It is super tight. I'm afraid this thing's going to break the first time I crank it. It probably took me about an hour to get that spring on and in the right position because the tensioner, just like the cams, will walk back into a resting position and you have to load it up. This is one of those things where I thought it was going to be a 2-minute kind of job to put on a spring. It ended up taking me an hour. And I know for a fact that this information here is not available anywhere online. It's not in the workshop manual, not in any video, it's not in any tutorial that I've ever seen, definitely not in the Real Fixes Real Fast video. This is the only place you're going to be able to see this and see how it's actually done. On the Mazda 626, MX6, Ford Probe, Telstar, and Protege, that's how you get it done. Well, I got my new timing covers on. No idea how long that's going to last. If you can't get a socket on here, it means you got to lower the engine. Now what we need to do is remove this crank pulley bolt that we put in there temporarily in order to time the engine. Now that we have it timed, we're about to put our crankshaft pulley / harmonic balancer back on. If you slowly try to put tension on this and spin it around, it's not going to do anything. It's going to be a little harsh with it. See, just like that. See how it cracked loose? Pretty easy stuff, easy breezy. And we need to get our little shim. As you can see, teeth go on this side, obviously, and the lip goes on the outside. Since there's a keyway there, really easy to put on. Even a little kid could do that. See how it sits in there nice and flush? Everything looks really good there. I'm happy with that. Now we got our harmonic balancer. Now Mazda calls this a crankshaft pulley. On other vehicles, especially US domestics, this is known as a harmonic balancer. As far as I know, exactly the same, just two different terms for it. The surface of that balancer should be flush mounted with that ring behind there. But as you can see, that ring is recessed. To reinstall the crankshaft pulley, you don't need a steering wheel puller. You only need it to take it off. To put it back on, just basically center it up right on that keyway. It's the most important part, is you want this pulley to be flat up against that gear, because once you put that bolt in and you start winding it in, you want to wind it in and draw it in straight. This will basically just draw in the pulley in the same way that the puller draws it off. As long as you have everything lined up and it's nice and secure. In the water pump removal part 1 video, I didn't actually show how I stuffed all that rope in there, so I'm going to show you that. So from here, we're going to stuff the cylinder full of rope and then rotate it until these lines come back up. And hopefully that should... Hold on. I'm not trying to remove it now, I'm trying to install it. Fuck. I'm going to go 2 rotations on the crankshaft, and that should get us back up to top dead center. Now we want to stop just prior to top dead center, probably about 90 degrees before top dead center, which should be just about right about there somewhere. So we should be on a compression stroke now. What I do is take my long, it has to be a very long handle screwdriver, and I will just kind of push it up against the sidewall like that and then walk it down the sidewall. I can stuff a lot of rope in that way. And I'll just walk it in like so. And that is going down in there. And I got 9 feet of this to put in there, so this is going to take a while. Yes, it's time consuming. I'm doing what I need to do. You do what you need to do just to get the job done. Now I have the cylinder stuffed full of rope and we're ready to compress that. We're on the compression stroke. Now if you go past top dead center, obviously didn't put enough rope in there. It should not go past top dead center. We're probably about 50 degrees before top dead center right now. That seems to be about as far as I'm going to be able to get it. I'll switch to my torque wrench now. Torque spec is 116 to 122 foot-pounds. I'm going to set it at 120. We're good. As you can see, we're probably about 5 to 10 degrees before top dead center, so it could not go past top dead center. Almost fully compressed in there. That's 9 foot of rope compressed down to about 5 or 10 degrees. That's pretty close. So that rope is really squished in there. It did the job. We got our torque spec, 120. We're good. Continuing on. Alright, now I get to pull out the 9 feet of rope that's in here. Maybe I can just try and pull it out. Nope. After you torque the crank bolt down, you can just use a regular socket in order to back it off enough so that you can start pulling out your rope. Pull out your rope unless you back it off a little bit. It's all there, so we're good. Alright, that should be about right on the bottom. And bam, we're good. Now let's say you get to this step and you can't remember which belt goes to which. One belt has 5 ribs and the other belt has 4 ribs. Fairly easy to figure out. Which pulley is thicker, and that's your power steering pump pulley. That is going to get the larger belt. Alternator is the smaller belt and your power steering is your larger belt. After some research, I have figured out that that is actually the correct way. The head of the bolt goes on the inside of the alternator. The actual bolt is flanged. It is not designed to be put into that hole from this side. It is larger on one side of the bolt than the other. You can't put it in through this side no matter how much you try and force it unless you want to strip those threads. All of the factory diagrams show that the head of the bolt is actually on the inside. And just so you can see how this process kind of looks, keep an eye on that bolt head there. This side of the bracket is the only threaded side. The other side is not even threaded. This is just a plain hole on this bracket, on both sides of this bracket. But on the other side of the alternator hole, on that side, is not threaded either. This is the only threaded side, so this is the only side that's going to accept those threads. See how loose that is. So that doesn't have any tension yet. So what I'll do is put my hand back there, ratchet it down, tighten it as I'm pushing up on the alternator, and that should get it in the full back position, which is where you want it. You want that initial tension to be in the full position. Slam that all the way back. We're going to go ahead and start tightening this. Just wind that down until it's about hand tight. And it's going to be slow going because there's not a lot of room to move with this ratchet. And if you have a 5th gen, you're going to knock your hand against that receiver dryer. So you might actually have to use a wrench. Pay real close attention to that bolt. If that bolt looks like it's starting to bow or bend, stop tightening. You do not want to bend or break your adjuster bolt. And that should be 14 to 16 foot-pounds. And I don't have a torque wrench that's going to fit in here, so you just have to best guess. And then the adjuster bolt back here, we're going to do 24 to 33, so just about 28 foot-pounds. Alright, I think I've reached the limit. My bolt is not looking so hot there. When you have belt deflection, that is how far down you can basically push on the belt. When you push down on the belt, you should have no more than 6.5 to 7.0 millimeters of belt deflection for a brand new belt. For a used belt, that's about 8 to 9 millimeters. And you can purchase a special tool that will measure belt deflection, belt tension. And it's basically a 3-finger tool that pushes on that middle. It's measurable, but again, most people just go with the ruler and pushing down on the belt method. That should be good enough to get you by, but again, you can go out and purchase a tool just for that if you would like. I know that you're not going to be able to see the actual measurements here because I can barely see them, but I'm just going to demonstrate the process that I do. Push down on this belt and then measure that deflection, which is basically my upper limit that I'm looking for. Is if the belt slips off and the ruler comes up and goes over top of the belt. I set my measurements so that if I am out of spec, that ruler will come up off the top of that belt. I think I'm barely out of spec. I'm about 8 millimeters. And for a brand new belt, I still have to go about 1.5 millimeters, take a little bit off, so I'm going to have to tighten that adjuster bolt so that I can get within the range that I need to be. And that's how that's done, basically. You repeat that same exact process on the front. The only difference is that slide lock bolt is hard to get at underneath of that pulley. The adjuster bolt is the same exact process. I've already tightened down my pivot bolt, so that sucker's not moving anywhere. So I just need to get my slide lock bolt and then my adjuster bolt. Well, actually, I got to get the belt on there first. So that is how you do belt tension. So if you know how to do one belt, you automatically know how to do the other because it is the same exact type of mechanism. It's the same 3 bolts. That's all it is, 3 bolts. So I put my mount back in and then put my eyelet back on. Now the way that Mazda does it is they actually have a nut and then they put the eyelet on top of that nut and then put another nut and sandwich it like that. I don't like that because it only gives a tiny little edge of ground contact. So what I'm going to do is just put that on the eyelet. I'm going to use the same method that I'm pretty sure that they used to put on there. So I'm going to put an impact socket on there and just hammer it. And that's just going to hammer it flat, hammer it flush. Then I'm going to take this nut and I sanded down the surface. I'm just going to put that on there. Pin that down, tighten it down. Now I don't want to tighten it down all the way so that I still have some free play in order to put my through bolt through. Slips right through there, huh? Alright, now I have the through bolt through and the stopper back on, and my nuts fairly loose. I'll just start tightening those down more. So I've sanded this one, and this is the one that I'm going to use to put on my eyelet to make full contact around that eyelet. There we go. Next, I'm going to put the valve cover gasket back on. If you look real close, you can see little rings from where the valve cover gasket was seated. Same thing over here, there's little indentations. So what I plan on doing for those really leaky spots, real thick, because I do not want that crap happening again where I'm leaking inside of my plug wells. Something like that. So that's going to squish down on there. Okay, so I got something like that all along there. You don't have much time to do this, so you got to be kind of quick. That's what I'm trying to do quick.
The SLE hydraulic storage unit half starts. T-minus 15 seconds. And the solid rocket booster engine gimbal now underway.
The tightening sequence is a clockwise spiral starting from the valve cover bolt, which is on the very back here, going in a spiral pattern until you reach this. This is number 1, this is number 10. Go from 10 to 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Go all the way around. Actually, I think there's 11 bolts, but whatever. 3 clockwise sequences, and then torque down to 55 to 65 foot-pounds. Oh, fuck. Did it again. If you tighten these too much, these cheap aluminum screws will just shear right off. It's the second one I've done that. Now that it's stuck in the head. The bad part about this one is that it's right above the distributor. Sometimes I don't know my own strength. That's why I use torque wrenches. Now this one on the power steering line, that's just to keep this from vibrating. These don't have to be torqued down to much of anything. That's a nothing. I have 2 sheared off bolts now, one here and one there. Learn from my mistake. Never over torque your bolts. Actually, I wouldn't recommend taking it off. I would recommend taking it to a professional that can helicoil it. I don't have the supplies for that. Okay, so what's next? Spill-free funnels. Originally saw this on Eric the Car Guy. This is a Lisle, L-I-S-L-E product, and these things are freaking awesome. You always want to use distilled water. And yes, that even includes when you are draining and filling. Do not want to contaminate this with, I don't know, let's say well water, which I have done. Well water has a lot of heavy mineral deposits. And one thing that I'm going to check while I'm filling this is my water pump gonna leak. If it leaks, all of this has been for nothing. So I'm gonna look under there, and please God don't be leaking. Well, so far so good. It's gonna take a while to fill it that way on a completely empty dry system. I think it's 7 quarts for the 626. Consult your manual. Might be different for the V6, which means I'm probably gonna go through more than a gallon here. Should be almost 2 gallons. And I have done this on my video for the ATX to MTX swap. And as you can see, look how much I can fill that with. I'll just fill the whole thing. Since I know that it's going to use at least this entire gallon, I'm just going to go ahead and fill the whole thing and just let it burp down. Now here's the nice thing about this spill-free funnel. You put the stopper in the middle. So let's say I have grossly overfilled and there's a ton of water in here. Normally, if you lift off this entire thing, it's just going to spill all the way out, right? That's what this stopper is for. It plugs it, and then you can lift this entire canister up and not have a drop. Lisle spill-free funnel. Freaking awesome. I'd like to thank Eric the Car Guy for showing me that a long time ago, and I have absolutely loved it. Every DIYer should have one of these. We're probably sitting at about 7 inches higher. Your IAC is 7 inches higher than your radiator cap. So when you raise the car, it goes kind of like that. So you get a little bit more, maybe an inch or 2, but it can help. Here's the hose that I took off the PCV system, and you can blow in either way just to make sure there's no obstructions. I'll rotate my PCV valve, get that on. Okay, PCV's good. my belt squeal, I'm going to be pissed. Next is your battery terminals. And I really hate doing this because they always spark. Gives me the creeps. Okay. And when dealing with the ground system, it could spark. I don't like doing this with bare hands. Gives me... Okay. Do our body ground first. Ah, fuck! Now we got everything hooked up. Now at this point you might be tempted to put your fuel pump relay back in. I don't recommend that. Do a couple dry cranks. Your camshafts are going to get re-lubricated by the first couple initial starts. So the oil pump will force oil up into the head and will start recoating everything. I've had my system unhooked for probably about 2 weeks doing this video. It's taken me a long time. If this process takes you a while, all of the oil that leaks off of your cam lobes, if your cam lobes become dry, you do not want that first strike to be really dry. That's why you don't want to put in your fuel pump relay and just start the car. You want to give it a couple of initial cranks to get that oil redistributed everywhere. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to leave this out. I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not, but always keep a fire extinguisher handy. I have 2 fire extinguishers within arm's reach at just about any time. That's something that I do off camera. I don't usually show that. Okay, so we're just going to blip the starter. There should be plenty of lubrication. Went around in those camshafts now, so the oil pump should squirt into the head, and the HLA should be doing their job now. So everything should be lubricated in there, and we're ready to start. And yes, this part does always make me nervous. I've done this 3-4 times now, and it always makes me nervous. That's just a vibration, but it's not actually taking any water down that I can see. Belts are running good. They didn't squeak. No squeals there, so it actually sounds pretty good. Put that in there so it stops it up, and you can just take this right off. There's all your water. Check that out. And it's not coming out the bottom because of that stopper. I don't think I'm going to do a part 3. I am just going to do a completely separate video for timing. Just want to take some time to say thank you for the advice that was given to me by Jeffrey Wilson and Schrodinger's Box. And if you have not checked out Schrodinger's Box, highly recommend you do that, as well as Turbo Cobra, Spelunkered, as always, Rich Pan, Eric the Car Guy. I'm a huge fan of Eric the Car Guy. I love Scanner Danner. There are a lot of people that come to me for advice. But then there's also a lot of people that I go to for advice. So to those people that I depend on for good advice, good, solid, experienced wisdom, I say thank you very much. And of course, I cannot forget to say thank you to my close circle of friends on the Mazda66.net website. Snailman, Xenomorph, FIS, Zepticon, Prince Valorum, Indy28, Monoxide Child. Thank you. It's been 2 days. My car's back together, and I don't have a single leak. So far so good. Other than the obvious people that I thank for advice, I'd like to thank all of my subscribers. I have a video coming up soon, which will be the control arm and tie rod video. Those components have been paid for by YouTube, essentially. It took 2 years, but the money that I got from YouTube, I went and bought some low control arms and tie rod ends. So that video is going to be, I don't know what to call it, subscriber paid for. The ads run, people click on them. I have no idea what they are. All I know is after 2 years, Google sent me a check. Now I have parts. I'm actually getting pretty close to 1 million views. Obviously, the most amount of subscribers I've ever had, and that number seems to just be going up every single month. I've doubled from last month. My only guess is people like water pump and timing belt videos. I would just like to say thank you to all of my subscribers and everyone that's given me advice. I appreciate it. You're awesome. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time,